We begin this news hour in Kenya, where William Ruto has been sworn in as president after narrowly winning last month's elections. The ceremony was held a week after the Supreme Court upheld his victory. His political rival, Raila Odinga, had challenged the results. Mr. Ruto replaces Uhuru Kenyatta, under whom he served as deputy since 2013. Tens of thousands packed Nairobi Stadium for the inauguration, but defeated candidate Raila Odinga did not attend. He said he still had serious concerns about his opponent's victory. Mr. Ruto hailed his win as a moment like no other, adding that a village boy had become president.
In this process, we have demonstrated the maturity of our democracy, the robustness of our institutions, and the resilience of the Kenyan people. By far, the largest winners of this election is the people of Kenya. We have done well as a nation. We have blazed the trail in an increasingly challenging environment where democracy is consistently on trial. Special recognition goes to my worthy competitor and friend, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, and his running mate, the Honorable Martha Wangari Karua, and all the other candidates who mounted a vigorous and determined campaign. I assure them that their supporters will be my constituents. I will work with all Kenyans, irrespective of who they voted for.
To whom the victory tastes good. That's William Ruto, the new president of Kenya. Well, for more on this, let's cross live to Nairobi and speak to Arise East Africa correspondent Mark Bichachi. Good to see you, Mark. So after a grand ceremony in the capital, Nairobi, William Ruto assumes the office of the president of Kenya. Talk us through what happened today.
Well, it was indeed an interesting scene seeing the President Uhuru Kenyatta hand over the reins of power to William Ruto. Of course, the venue was packed with Kenyans from different parts of the country who had come in to witness the historic moment. We know that William Ruto had more than 50% of the vote, so his support is quite significant in this country. He talked about in his speech a lot of the issues that are discussed that he had discussed with him during his campaign, promising to reduce the cost of fertilizer, promising to create what is popularly known as the Hustler Fund through the Ministry of Cooperatives. So there was a lot of promise that Kenyans were looking into. There were also some moments where his deputy, for example, talked about there being empty coffers within the republic, which caused concern among Kenyans. But by and large, it was a successful event, another peaceful transition for the Kenyan government. This being the third in about 20 years.
And I understand that some 60,000 people travelled to watch that ceremony, Mark. I mean, what was the mood among them? Presumably excitement for some and disappointment for Raila Odinga's supporters who are still coming to terms with their loss.
Yeah, it is quite interesting. It was a mixed emotion. I remember I was on my way when I was stopped by William Ruto's motorcade as he was going to be inaugurated. And what was interesting to see was almost a near split of the motorists who were excited to see him pass by, and those who remained in their cars unmoved by the spectacle before them. And this is what is being seen across the country. Those who supported William Ruto are jubilant, and those who supported Raila Odinga are quite sad. And of course, the statement by Raila Odinga saying that he still has concerns about the electoral system in this country and how it is going is very interesting as it continues. So the country, yes, is peaceful. There is no cause of panic, but there is political sadness and jubilation on both sides.
And of course, Mark, since about 2018, Mr. Ruto has been something of a lone, isolated figure within government, hasn't he? Despite being deputy president, he was stripped of many of his roles after falling out with President Kenyatta, with some cabinet ministers criticizing him openly. I mean, is this likely to be payback time for him?
Well, according to his speech, he promises it's not payback time, but you can be assured that a lot of those cabinet secretaries will not be returning to their positions. Now, whether he will take it beyond that, he has promised not to, promising to work with all Kenyans and to bury the hatchet. However, what was said and done is quite damaging to the person of William Ruto. He was isolated. He ran on almost one-man campaign since 2018. Now, what he's going to do with his newfound power in as far as how he's going to deal with those who did not support him is the biggest question of the day. In fact, in his speech, he went far to ensure that those who felt threatened, that he would take time to force revenge on his opponents. He took time to say that he'll work with Raila Odinga. He took time to say that he respects him and he will work with all of his supporters. So this is the question that is on everybody's lips. Will he take revenge?
Yes, and that's a very good question. And I suppose the other thing, I mean, I listened to his speech. He promised to unite Kenyans. But the other question, of course, is how deep are the divisions in the country and how hard will it be to unite them, even if he's willing to do so?
Well, Kenya is an interesting country. If you look at our history, in 2002, we got out of the Moi dictatorship, and what happened then? We were a very peaceful country. In 2007, we came to near a civil war. There was a lot of bloodshed, but thereafter, after the handshake, we moved on quite swiftly. 2017, another acrimonious election with loss of life as people demonstrated across the country. But once again, with the handshake, the country seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. So is it possible for Kenya to have peace? Yes, it is possible. It's quite simple. I think this country has perfected the art of making peace. However, the issue that remains quite front and center is William Ruto willing to make himself the forerunner of the peaceful conversation? Is he going to go the extra mile to make peace with the people who did not support him? These are the key questions that he is being asked. So it really depends on what William Ruto will do as president. But in terms of making peace, yes, it is possible.
And of course, as you said, William Ruto now officially Kenya's president, but he's obviously been preparing for this moment for a few weeks now. You talked about those who might not be returning to the cabinet. Do we know who is likely to be appointed as ministers in the new government?
Well, we know of some based on the pre-election agreements that were there. So, for example, the person of Musalia Mudavadi being the chief minister, that is on the cards. We've got Wetangula, who became Speaker of the National Assembly. So those are the only two positions that had been promised outrightly. So we are waiting to see who he appoints and from which communities, because Kenya is a very tribal country, and our law actually dictates that he needs to select ministers from the different tribes. So we wait to see whether how he will spread his cabinet. But as at now, we only know that there's one person assured of a seat, and that is Musalia Mudavadi as chief minister and perhaps minister of finance.
And on a slightly higher, more philosophical level, Mark, is this the end of an era and the beginning of a new phase in Kenya's history?
That is indeed a good question. The question is, can the old guard represented by Raila Odinga continue to function in Kenya's democracy? And that is the question on everyone's lips. And I'll give you what my crystal ball says. I do not think Raila Odinga has another election in him. I don't think he will last the next 5 years in terms of being politically astute as he has been. I think he's staring down retirement. But the question is, Uhuru Kenyatta, who is still a young man, about 64 years of age, will he go into the shadows? Or we've seen William Ruto already give him the position of envoy to the region, peace envoy to the region. Will that mean that Uhuru Kenyatta remains quiet and does not play any part in Kenyan politics? So in my view, the man to watch is Uhuru Kenyatta, and to see whether Raila Odinga will finally pass that all-coveted baton of leader of the opposition in this country.
Looking at those pictures, it's just so lovely to see the pomp and ceremony of all of this. Mark, thank you ever so much for bringing us the day. Mark Bichachi is Arise East Africa correspondent, and he was talking to me there from Nairobi.